Should I gift money now or wait until later? That is the topic we're talking about today. It's a great question people ask all the time. So today we're going to dig in. Welcome back to the Money Master Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Connie here with Nick and Tori, and we are in the Dallas area of Texas, and glad to have you joining us today. So I'm really excited about today's topic, you guys. We're going to talk about a question that people often ask. Should I gift money now while I'm alive or leave it until later? This is a really great topic and it can go all over the place. But first of all, before we dig in, do you guys have any personal stories of maybe when one of your loved ones left something while they were alive for you?
I mean, we've had both sides of our parents help just get us started. When you're newlyweds and you just don't have enough, you don't have that down payment on that house, or like just have people to help you get along, and they get to support us, and then we've been able to use it and get our life started.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my grandfather gave you and I $5,000 when we were very young
Mm-hmm.
to put a down payment down on our first house. We bought a brand new brick house for $57,000, 1,500 square feet, because we lived on the border of Mexico in those days.
On the Texas side.
On the Texas side. And that was super helpful,
And I can say, like, for me, that feeling of when your grandpa did that for us, it was so timely. Like it was so impactful for us because we really needed that money. Like you said, like, how did it make you feel when that happened for you?
Well, it's almost that, when you're considering it in terms of them doing it while they're alive versus leaving that at the end of life, like we needed it then,
Mm-hmm.
not when we were, later in our life and a little more settled and a little more, on
Yep.
our own. And so being able to, one, thank them while they were still alive and have that relational. And then just, both sides of our family helped us remodel that house and paint it and did stuff. So it's something we all did together. It's a memory, if
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We assume that we're going to leave money to people as part of our gifting strategy at the end of life. And it makes sense to strategically give while you're alive if you can. But the challenge with that is, can I safely do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's why people are maybe afraid to do it is I got to take care of myself and make sure I'm okay in retirement and those types of things. Can I afford it? And so most people just think I'll leave it when I'm gone. It's easier to they'll have whatever's left.
Right.
Yeah. If you like to read, I recommend a book that I think we've all here read. It's called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And it was such an eye-opening book. Now, with all books, right, there were some things that I was like, I don't necessarily agree with that. But for the most part, there were so many really great takeaways that I took from the book. Things like giving to your kids while you're alive, which we already talked about. Or it also talks about there's these 3 circles that at a small window of time, they overlap: your health, your wealth, and time. And when those overlap, that's your window of time that you are able to travel, to do things. And it's just a really interesting read. So if you like to read, it's an easy read. It's a fun read.
We've talked about that book a lot. It's very good.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we've all shared our little fun stories, when people ask this question, right, what are some of the key financial factors that they can help determine if now is a good time?
Well, you definitely want to know if you're at risk of outliving your money, right? You don't want to outlive your money. That's everybody's primary goal. So have you figured in the cost of health care? Have you figured in custodial care? Have you figured in the cost of inflation? Can you afford to do it, right? That's the big card that people want to know.
Right.
Because you also want to know, like, what's the tax impact, right? If I give, and there's a lot of confusion around like the annual exclusion amount, like how
And
much,
the lifetime exclusion, those get a little bit confusing.
how
when
much
it
can
comes
I
to
afford
taxes.
to give? And they think it's the end of the world. And for most people that isn't as big of a deal, because it's like $19,000 a year in 2025.
Mhm.
And so that's, if you wanted, you can actually double that for a husband and wife. So you could give $38,000 and not have what they say is the gift tax. Well, what that means is if you go over that, then you have to file a special form when you do your taxes that says
You gifted above that amount.
for your lifetime exclusion amount. Oh, what's my lifetime exclusion amount? So you're saying they're tracking my lifetime exclusion amount?
Your
Yes.
gifts, yeah.
So it's currently like
Just over
$13.6
$13
million. Now, 2 years ago, it was like 11 million. Before that, it was 10. And then like a decade ago or so, I could be wrong, it was like 1 million, right? And there's always a battle over what that exclusion amount is going to be. So why that matters is for most people, if that means if you die and you don't have $13 million,
That you've
then,
gifted over your lifetime.
right. So then you're not going to have any estate tax, right? But if you go over that, then everything over that gets taxed at 40%, right? So
State.
they could change that. They could change it back down to $1 million. So like it's good practice to try to stay below that if you can, but it's not the end of the world if you decide to give somebody $100,000 and you go over by a lot. It's just going to count against your lifetime exclusion.
So that $19,000, if somebody has a required minimum distribution coming up and they give a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution to a church or a charity, does that count in that 19,000 or that's separate?
No, it's completely different. Right?
Okay.
There's
QCDs are under different.
and they have their own,
Yeah.
maximums that you can do.
Gotcha.
And you have to be 70 and a half to do that. Whereas you can gift anytime you want to.
I see. Okay. So what are some practical reasons to wait to gift?
One is knowing the person that's receiving it. Can they handle it? Are they prepared? Is it going to cause more problems or actually be
Right.
helpful? Some people aren't ready. And that's why some people do set up legacy. Estate trusts, things like that will dictate when that person will receive that money. So it's, that's something to consider just beyond financial.
Or is your retirement plan tight?
Yeah.
Meaning, is it still a little bit dubious and questionable that maybe you need to go a little bit further into the retirement years before you feel comfortable doing that?
Knowing that trade-off. I mean, we've had people ask that even about just helping their kids through college, but we're saying, we can show them that this puts some strain on your retirement. Like what's the trade-off here for you on
Yeah.
what you're willing to do?
Yeah.
Now, on the opposite side is that if you know that your plan is solid and in place and you have earmarked for custodial care needs and you have those future cash flows accounted for, then you can identify that money earlier and say, okay, I can reasonably afford to give some of this money away. And that's something that we help people do all the time.
Well, and I've seen the play out of that. I mean, we know someone who received a large inheritance that they weren't expecting. And he even mentioned that this is great. I'm so thankful that I came into this money, but man, I could have used that when we were
Yeah.
young. Like,
Yeah.
man, I wish they would have done some things along the way that would have helped me and my wife get started. Just the things that could have done for their family. And so there's lots to consider when you're thinking about that.
There's not a right or a wrong answer at all. This is just table topic discussion. Yeah.
I think it's better to do it while you're alive if you can, and if you can feel good about it for a lot of people. And as Tori said, if they're ready for it, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's a whole emotional side that comes into this too. Like for your grandpa or for when my grandpa gifted us money before he passed away. Like it's a very emotional thing to be able to give to your loved ones. We have a family that every year he pays for him and his family, his kids and their families to go on a trip together. And that pays huge dividends for
Beyond
years
the
and years and
financial.
years to
Yeah.
come. Yeah.
And memories and relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, one of our clients, her goal is to take each of her 9 grandchildren, and we've said this over the years because she's been doing it for years. Each of her 9 grandchildren to Disney World one at a time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes 2 at a time because it's too many years of doing this for her. But it's just an amazing thing, and we know Disney is definitely an expensive thing to do, and to be able to do that, that's part of the gifting and the
That
legacy.
becomes impactful. I mean,
Yeah.
I talked to someone yesterday. They do something similar. It's just the grandparents and that one grandkid. They go on a trip every summer, and one year they weren't able to. This summer just got busy, and he noticed. He said, "I missed that. I missed
Yeah.
y'all." And those become lasting memories.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey there, this is a quick break to talk about how you pay yourself in retirement. People often ask about how much they're going to be able to spend each month from their savings when they're no longer working. You may have heard of the 4% rule, the bucket strategy, or nameless others, but none of them do a good job measuring your true spending capacity. That is, how much can you afford to spend each month confidently? I wrote a white paper you might want to read. It's about a guardrail system for retirement that can help you do better in retirement. And I think it's probably the best withdrawal strategy available. There's no cost to download and read it. If you want a copy, all you have to do is text the word income to our business line at 214-988-9178. That's it, just the word income, and send it to 214-988-9178. And we'll send that paper about guardrails straight to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that we also did is like I mentioned, we try to identify when there's money available earlier. And if that is the case, then, you can do more meaningful things with that. So when we were just doing reviews recently, we had a family that they wanted to be able to gift their two sons, specifically right around $100,000. And so they're able to do this during their first 5 years of retirement. They're actually giving that exclusion amount of $19,000 to each son. And since they're married, they could actually double it up if they wanted to over the period of a couple of years. And they're able to kind of help them to, they can use that for, I don't know what they're using it for, but I'm sure they're going to put about $100,000 to good use.
Yeah. Well, that's one really great idea, kind of thinking outside of the box. What are some other ideas? Because we do have a lot of families who have done many different things. We've talked about some of them, but are there any others that come to mind?
Trying to think of other examples of.
Well, qualified charitable distributions, we have several people that do a QCD to their church every year. And, you can't do that until you're 70 and a half under current rules. But, we see that happen quite a bit. We also had somebody say, hey, I don't need this IRA at all. So I'm going to convert all of it to Roth and then let that thing just grow.
Yeah.
And it's like this ultra amazing legacy play because it's it's invested very, very well, very aggressively, so that this gift is not only going to be inherited, way bigger than what it is right now, but then if the rules don't change, then the son will be able to actually spread that out over 10 more years and let that defer even further without paying taxes on it.
Right.
We also know some families that have set up individual accounts for each of their children.
Or grandchildren.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, UTMA accounts.
Yeah.
Well,
Stocking stuffers.
No, we've had clients do it differently too, where they've opened their own individual account in their personal name, but it's a TOD, transfer on death,
yes.
to
Yes.
that person.
Yeah.
Another thing we've done is we've got people who have said, I really want to give this, but whatever's left over is going to so-and-so, but I just married a new spouse and I want to make sure this goes this place, that goes that place. So what we've done, even though it's an IRA and it isn't converted yet, or it's still taxes haven't been paid on it, we've actually just labeled that IRA legacy IRA, and we've separated it
From their income.
at the custodian. They know I might need this, right?
Mhm.
So this is the key here for these people. I don't want to gift it yet because I feel like I might need it, but we labeled it legacy, and then we put that person's name on it. So it's like they don't even know about it, or they might know about it. Depends on the family we're talking about. But every time we look at their accounts, it's like, here's all my accounts I'm using, and then those legacy accounts, I can use them if I want to, but those are labeled for
Right.
my sons or daughters.
Right.
So we've shared lots of ideas. Maybe you're listening and you have done something that we haven't mentioned or a great idea. Leave it in the comment box. We'd love to see that.
Well, and I know people are going to say, you forgot to mention the donor advised fund. So,
Yeah.
that's a thing people do to get the tax deduction in this year. And then we also have people set up trusts, for the purpose of throttling out gifts, after they're no longer here, meaning they don't want it to just get dumped onto their heirs all of a sudden. So they'll set up that trust so that they can kind of have a little bit of control over how that gets distributed later.
Yeah.
So there's probably
Also,
other ways.
direct payments to college institutions are handled differently. Again, you can make direct payments for tuition, and that's handled a little differently, so you can help pay for school.
Yeah. Any other final questions that you guys think would be helpful for someone making this decision? for the any final questions for someone to ask themselves?
I think the first thing you should do is ask yourself, am I financially ready to be able to do
Yeah.
gifting the way I want?
Run the numbers.
Yeah.
Look at your plan and make sure. I mean, it's
Am I going to need it for my own retirement? My
yeah. Are you secure?
hmm And then, do I want to see the impact now versus later? And are they ready, for that now or
Yeah.
later, right?
Yeah.
There might be some reasons where leaving it for end of life is the best call.
So
But that's not necessarily
I'll
wrong.
give you an example. Step up in basis. Not getting tax advice here, but for a long time, it's been that if you give your appreciated stock to your, heir, that there's a step up in basis, which means if you were to give it to them while you were alive, then they would eventually have to pay taxes on whatever
Your
that
basis.
lower basis was from when you purchased it. But if you give it after death, then those taxes are taken care of and it starts over in terms of the level of taxes. So if it grows from there on, then you pay the heir would pay taxes on that.
Yeah, there are some reasons where waiting until after you pass might be beneficial.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. And if you've been listening and some questions have popped into your mind and you're wondering, how does Brindle and Bay do financial planning? You can find us at www.brindleandbay.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and share with your friends. See you next time.
Nick Davis is an investment advisor representative of Brindle Bay Financial Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This show is for informational purposes only. Any references to client experiences made may be deemed to be indirect testimonials. Clients were not compensated for providing any testimonial statements. Any references to client experiences are for illustrative purposes only. Actual client experiences will vary. Any exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered financial advice or recommendation to buy or sell a financial vehicle. You should consult a qualified financial tax or legal professional before taking any action. This program is not endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Brindle Bay Wealth Management is affiliated with Brindle Bay Financial Advisors.